2 weeks ago, the United States approved a $1.3 billion arms sale to Saudi Arabia. But the deal is minuscule compared to existing contracts between the two countries, over $100 billion in arms deals that have cleared Congress in the last 5 years or so.
There's this huge amount of weaponry in the pipeline, which is going to go on for years and years.
William Hartung, a leading policy expert on arms and security, says that the weapons we give Saudi Arabia are all-encompassing.
It's things like essentially almost giving them a whole new air force, training their National Guard, giving them new combat vehicles. Now they're talking about a big missile defense system.
President Obama's administration has presided over the biggest arms sales boom since World War II, about $30 billion more in contracts in the first 6 years of Obama than in the totality of the Bush administration.
When Obama ran for office and when he first came in, he wanted to be perceived as the president who ends wars. He wasn't going to send tens of thousands or hundreds of thousands of troops to Iraq. He was going to get out of Afghanistan. But what happened was he just decided to use force in a different way. So he went for drone strikes. He went for arms sales and training. The U.S. has provided training to 163 countries in 2014. So there's hardly anywhere in the world that's not getting some kind of military help from the United States, either weapons or training. And so the idea is if the U.S. doesn't send troops, they'll arm allies to carry out some of the same functions. But unfortunately, a lot of times that goes awry, as in the case of the Saudis, where allegedly this equipment was to help them fight ISIS, and now they're using it to prosecute this horrible war in Yemen.
Now that the United States is fighting less, weapons manufacturing companies are targeting foreign markets, especially Saudi Arabia, in an effort to expand their revenue. When asked about the Iran deal and the diffusion of tensions in the Middle East earlier this year, Lockheed Martin CEO Marillyn Hewson reassured investors in a phone conversation that the world was unstable enough.
There's certainly plenty of threats in the region. Just the volatility, even if there may be some kind of deal done with Iran, there is volatility all around the region. And each one of these countries believes they've got to protect their citizens and the things that we can bring to them help in that regard. You could take that same argument to the Asia-Pacific region, which is another growth area for us. A lot of volatility, a lot of instability, a lot of things that are happening both with North Korea as well as some of the tensions between China and Japan. And so in both of those regions, which are growth areas for us, we expect that there's going to continue to be opportunities for us to bring our capabilities to them.
All the big contractors, Boeing, Lockheed Martin, Raytheon, General Dynamics, have made it a goal to increase their exports in the next few years. The Pentagon budget sort of leveled off, at least in terms of spending on major weapons in the last few years. So they're looking for foreign sales for growth, sometimes raising their sales 25% or more. So, bad news for the world in a sense is good news for the bottom line of companies like Lockheed Martin.
That means Saudi Arabia's use of force, whether through repressing its own population, attacking Yemen, or funneling arms to militants in Iraq and Syria, is a boon for weapons contractors. And not just in the United States. Last year, Canada signed a $15 billion contract, its largest in its history, with Saudi Arabia for the Canadian-based company GD Land Systems to build an undisclosed amount of light armored vehicles, the same types already used in Bahrain on civilians in its 2011 crackdown on protesters and public dissent. The United Kingdom and its largest contractor, BAE Systems, also wants to expand its $6 billion priority market with Saudi Arabia, centered around BAE's Eurofighter Typhoon jet. And France signed a $12 billion deal over the summer that includes a fleet of patrol boats made by the French company DCNS. The immensity of these contracts means that governments in these countries won't criticize Saudi behavior. Here in the United States especially, politicians are silent on the use of arms in Saudi human rights violations, for example, because speaking out means losing hefty campaign contributions from the defense industry.
The contractors give, $20 million or so per election cycle. And a lot of it goes to members of the Armed Services Committee or members with military plants in their districts. So people like Mac Thornberry, who runs Armed Services in the House, got a big boost in his contractor contributions when he took over the chair there. The former chair, Buck McKeon, was the biggest recipient of the entire industry. So, they hone in on people who they think can help them. And as a result, you'll see members from places like Michigan and Ohio wanting to push tank sales to Saudi Arabia to keep factories open, or Boeing in St. Louis getting the Missouri delegation behind a sale to Kuwait that'll keep their F-18 combat aircraft program going. So there's this kind of economic dependency that's developed over the years, so that certain communities in certain states, if the Pentagon's not keeping those production lines open, they have this kind of urgent economic push to press for exports.
And because the Saudis purchase their weapons directly from the United States and aren't aid recipients like Egypt and Israel, Congress can't politicize these arms deals even as a taxpayer issue.
At least there's kind of a nexus in Congress when the aid package goes through. When it's a sale, as Saudi Arabia just pays money for these things, they don't get any aid. A lot of that is Congress pays less attention. There's no taxpayer dollars involved. It's good for U.S. weapons manufacturers. So unfortunately, it's a rare occasion when one of these Saudi deals gets scrutiny from Congress of any sort. You know, if it were aid to Saudis, if there were billions of dollars going to support this of taxpayer money, I think you might get more attention from the public, from the press, and from Congress than we're getting now.
Hartung hopes to see a coalition of senators and representatives come together to challenge the role of Saudi Arabia in both Middle Eastern and American politics, as well as our dependency on them through our military-industrial complex.
What's missing here is some sort of leadership in Congress. And it wouldn't take a lot of members. If a few senators, a few members of the House sort of followed through. What are the Saudis doing with these weapons? What does it mean for people in that part of the world? What does it mean for the United States' reputation, for human rights? I think they could make some noise and maybe slow up some of these sales and reduce the impact on civilians in the area.